Hello. How is everybody doing? Who do we have here? I don't think I can see people joining, but I can see comments. So please comment so I know that you're here. I just get a hey from my wife. Hello, Dee Dee. How is everybody doing? Hi, Andrea. Better. Nice. All right. Well, it's good to see some people on, and a few more might join, but yeah, I guess we'll just kind of jump into it. Hello. Hi, Amy. So yeah, I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about tonight, and just kind of look through some ideas. And where I ended up was talking about Jacob. And a lot of us, I think, have heard the story of Jacob, and just cut a fair bit of about Jacob in the Bible. So I guess a lot of us know kind of earlier in the Bible in Genesis, Jacob, he is, one of the popular stories is he tricked his brother out of his birthright. So, Jacob, the meaning of the name Jacob is someone or something that taking place of another through force, scheming, or strategy. Another interpretation of the name is like heel grabber, because when he was born, he was holding on to his brother's heel as if he was trying to like pull his way through and be the first one out. And so, yeah, when they were younger, he tricked his father into him giving him his older brother's birthright. And so as a result, his brother Esau wanted to kill him. So he left his home and took everything and left. And kind of where I'm going to be picking back up here is years later. And so he had left home for a while, got married twice, and then was making his way back home. And on his way back home, he heard that his brother Esau was a little bit further ahead. And so he started getting worried, rightfully so. And so he's heading back home, knows Esau's there, and he's like, oh man, my brother's going to be upset. And so he figures, okay, how do we get out of this? So he sends some gifts ahead. So they send some gifts and some messengers ahead. And then they come back and they said, well, he's coming back with 400 men. So now Jacob gets worried. So he does a couple things. He separates his camp into two different groups. He takes some time to pray to God for protection, and then sends even more gifts out to Esau in hopes that that's going to kind of get him out of this situation. So where I'm going to pick up is Genesis 32, starting at chapter 22. It says, that night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. And the ford is just like a low or shallow area of this stream where they could kind of walk across. After he sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob said, please tell me your name. And he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. So when I read that the first time and thought about, kind of talking about it, the first thing I thought was, what just happened? I think that might be the weirdest verse in the Bible. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. It escalates out of nowhere. I looked up other translations, and there's really nothing else to be added there. Just a guy shows up and starts fighting him. So yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one, and kind of what we take away from it. I feel like there's a lot that could be pulled out of this story, but I'm going to kind of share a little bit about what I get out of it. So yeah, he's worried. He's kind of all alone, sends his family across, and guy shows up out of nowhere, starts fighting him, and then touches his hip after they've been fighting all night long, and asks him to let him go and give up. But he says, not until I'm blessed. And then he realizes this is God, and he changed his name to Israel, which means the one who prevails with God. And so then when we look back there, I think it's kind of there's more said than just the text there. So, for example, when the man asks him, God asks him, "What is your name?" He says, Jacob. And going back to the beginning there, Jacob meaning like a trickster, a schemer, a con man, kind of, he's kind of admitting this is who and this is what I am. And then God says, you will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, one who struggled with God. He changes his name. And not only that, but, gives him this limp. He makes him a new person, a new name, a new identity. So one of the first things I want to talk about here is kind of what is, I think all of us have, your Jabbok. Remember, they were crossing this low point in the stream of Jabbok, this place where, we're struggling with something, and maybe, kind of trying to push through something in our own power and not relying on God. It could be a work situation where you're stuck in a job that's draining, and you're just grinding through and just, it's just do another day, work for the weekend and just push through. It could be a marriage that's, not where it should be. You're not living up to the full content of your vows. You're just, you're struggling. You're just kind of living together, but your marriage isn't where it's supposed to be. I mean, maybe it's an addiction, something that you're struggling with that, you're trying to deal with under your own strength and not giving up to God. And often, in these kind of situations, when we have struggles, we can convince ourselves that, we can manage it. We'll just take it a step at a time and just power through. And like Jacob tricked others, we can trick ourselves into thinking, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. So then I'd ask you kind of, what is it? So then, what would it take for us to surrender? Some people are just, stubborn. They're stuck in their own ways. And I can be like that myself. I know that, when I need to do something, whether it's, I need to move something, it's recommended that my wife knows this more than anybody. You do something. This requires 2 or 3 people to do. It's like, nah, I'd rather not ask for help. I'd rather just, find a way to work it out myself. And it can be silly stuff like that. I love to help other people, but I'm not very good at asking for help. And then the same thing can apply when I'm running into an issue in life. I'll often jump to, what should I do about it? What can I do about it? Rather than going to God in prayer and just offering it up to him to say, like, God, you know best. And, you designed me. And just, what do I do? So if we look back at, God fighting Jacob, and he even, face to face, and my life was spared. Other translations, say that, I fought with God and humans and I've overcome. So you think like, well, Jacob fought God and he won, which, I guess I kind of picture it more like, God was holding back. If you've ever, wrestled a kid, and you're just holding them there and just letting them fight with everything they've got, and you can win at any point. You can pop that hip out of place at any point. But God lets them fight and lets them struggle through. And again, more said than just the words there. He says, let me go, for it is daybreak. It's just like, are you still fighting? And so I think it's just interesting. And so eventually we need to reach this place like Jacob did, where he's like, I'm not in charge. And, you surrender to God. And this true freedom comes from just God's mercy in those situations that we're struggling through. And then when we identify these issues, we work through these struggles, we submit, and then God, gives us, this new name, this new identity, not a literal name like, Jacob becomes Israel, but a new perspective on what we're struggling with. And we walk away, both stronger and weaker in ourselves and stronger in God. And so, Jacob is there at night, prideful, self-sufficient, persistent, stubborn. And then in the morning, he limps away as Israel, walking with this new humility, this new reliance on God. And so, he gets this physical sign, this physical limp, showing this sign of a struggle that he's gone through that resulted in growth as a person. And now, kind of the other way to look at this story is, kind of as I've been talking, it's all been in this negative context of this negative idea of wrestling with God, like you're fighting God. But I think that there's a lot that God wants us to wrestle with him about. So if we go back a little bit further before he's alone and before he starts wrestling God, if we go back to verse 9, it says, then Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you've shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed the Jordan, but now I've become two camps. Remember, he kind of separated his family. He broke up into two groups so that if Esau came and attacked one of them and they all died, at least the other ones would have a chance to run away. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and I will make your descendants like the sea of the sand, which cannot be counted. So later on, I feel like, God initiates this physical fight, but I think in this physical wrestling. But, before that point, we see, Jacob wrestling with God in prayer. He's got a situation he's facing, and he's like, he's going back. He's like, God, you told me to go back home, and now you're leading me right into my brother who's coming at me with 400 men. Like, what's going on here? And I feel like, we serve a God that, we can ask questions like that too. If we go to Matthew 7:7-8, it says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be open. And some translations talk about, persistent knocking or persistent asking. And so kind of, it reminds me of, we always ask for, these prayer requests, and sometimes we'll see the same prayer requests coming up again and again. And, without this understanding of a God that, wants us to struggle for, wants us to keep pushing, be persistent, keep wrestling with him for these answers to prayer, and going, go back to what Jacob said. Sorry, scrolling. I will not let you go unless you bless me. So we can take that same kind of attitude when we're in prayer, and, we're asking God for something. We're wrestling with God for something, whether it's understanding, whether it's breakthrough. We're looking for an answer, but, we're not letting go until we get that answer. So sorry, just lost my spot. Yeah, there we go. So we see the same prayer requests coming in. And sometimes the questions come up again and again and again because maybe we just don't have the answer yet. And it's not because God's, unwilling to, change the situation or give you a blessing, but often there's something that, something else that needs to change. Sometimes it's maybe something that needs to change in us. Maybe we're just not ready for the answer yet. Maybe the answer's already there and we just don't realize it because we're, we're stubborn and hard-headed like Jacob was. So, I think God calls us to be persistent in prayer. And to clarify, persistent prayer isn't vain repetition of prayer, but it's, a commitment to hold on until our prayers are answered. Going back to Jacob, I will not let you go until you bless me. I also find it interesting, the way that the form of fighting that God took, it didn't say, a man appeared out of nowhere and hit him with a staff. And, a man didn't appear out of nowhere and I guess, go Muhammad Ali on him. He didn't, wasn't punching. It was wrestling. And so I don't know if anybody who's listening or listening later has ever wrestled before with somebody, but it's close without getting too graphic. Any part of your body could be touching any part of that person's body. You are intimately in contact with somebody at all times. And so I think it's interesting to use that analogy or that imagery with when we wrestle with God in prayer, or, we could be reading the Bible as well, but when we're wrestling with God, we're in contact and there's just so much that we're, intertwined. And the goal when you're wrestling in the natural is often, submission. But in this case, we're, unlike going into a wrestling match, the goal at the end of the day is our submission, but we're holding on and we're fighting until we get that answer. And so I in addition to, praying and reading the Bible and stuff, we can wrestle with God, in community as well, with kind of one condition. You can get support from others and, talk, hey, I'm struggling with this thing and I just don't get why, I'm not getting this answer. But the one condition I would say, and I like the way I heard it put on a podcast I was listening to, is vent up and counsel down. So if you've got issues, you've got, you can have gripes with God. You can process these things with God. But if you've got these issues, you can vent up to God, but also vent up as in, not that there's ranks of Christians or anything like that, but vent to people who, have been through these struggles, who have, learned these lessons already. You risk, if you vent down, for lack of a better term, casting doubt into other people that, maybe just don't have that foundation in God. So yeah, vent up, counsel down. And probably one of the most reassuring things to me that, God is okay with us wrestling with him is, I would say, in the same way, Jesus wrestled with God, which is a big old trip given the whole Trinity thing. But if we look at Mark 14:32, it says, they went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He said to them, stay here and keep watch. Going a little further, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me. So here's Jesus, Jesus of all people, saying to God, just like he's wrestling with God, does this have to happen? Do we have to do it like this? Also leave it to Jesus to the next sentence, come full circle, yet not what I will, but what you will. So he says to God, I'm struggling with this this is this is not going to be fun. This is going to be awful. I'm scared. I'm distressed, troubled, and yet I trust you. And so, not what I will, but what you will. So I got a few minutes left here, and I do want to take a little bit of time to pray. And so kind of as we've been going through, I hope that kind of like in your mind, you've got an idea, like what is my Jabbok? What is the thing that I'm struggling with right now that, whether it's, something you're trying to power through, on your own, and you're realizing, what, I've been struggling with this for so long and I haven't just offered it up to God. Or, something where, you're struggling with maybe just getting an answer to a prayer. I've been praying for this for years and I just, I don't have an answer yet. I don't know why. I don't understand. And I need to keep fighting. So if you do have any prayer requests, I should be able to keep up with the comments here. So please throw some prayer requests out there, and I'll do what I can to cover them in the time I got left. God, we just thank you just for the Bible, just these stories, these lessons, these, these just things that we can pull out and apply to our lives, God. God, I just pray that, as those listening now, those listening later, just that as we think of these, these Jabbok situations in our lives, these places where we're struggling, whether it's for answers or struggling under our own power, and just realizing we're not going to make it. I'm sure many of us here are in situations where, we don't understand, we just say, this is painful. I'm not sure that I can keep going. God, I just pray for breakthrough in that. And God, as we kind of go through this struggle, often we can, fall into doubt and unbelief. And it reminds me of, like in Mark, there's this, the man who wanted his son healed. And the line was, God, Jesus, I believe, but help my unbelief. God, I just lift up Kathy's family right now. And just pray for, just relationships there, God, and with her friend's family dealing with cancer. God, cancer's that's a big one. That's a big one, God. But not as big as you, God. God, I just pray that you just help us to learn to just trust and submit in the same way that, we hold on till we get that blessing, God. And then, if we're, struggling with something under our own power, just realizing that we just need to give that up to you, God. God, I just pray that just as we, we identify these areas where, we're struggling and we're fighting and stuff, and then we do just give that up, God. I pray that we walk away, with a new name, a new identity in you, God. God, that people can see the limp on us, this limp where it's just like, I've been through it with God, and, I am weaker to myself and I'm more reliant on God. God, because we know that you've got good plans for us, God. We just thank you for that. And God, we thank you for just obviously, we spoke about Jesus wrestling with you in the garden, God, right before he was sacrificed. We just thank you for that sacrifice, God, just as we, we're less than a week away to Easter. God, I just pray for the Good Friday service, as we, kind of focus on, I believe we're focusing on healing, God. And, as we go into Easter Sunday with this theme of coming home, God, people just coming home and returning to you and returning right into your arms, God. God, I just pray that you just bless everybody listening now, everybody listening later. I just pray that we all just have a lovely rest of the evening, rest of the week, and fantastic Easter, God. Thank you. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on Friday.